What are coalitions? Welcome to the Civics Academy Governance Series. In these videos, we explore different aspects of democratic governance. In this video, we look at the characteristics of coalitions in South Africa. Coalitions are not uncommon in South Africa, particularly in municipalities. But what is a coalition? We speak of a coalition when two or more political parties agree to work together and to share power temporarily. This is usually because no single party has won a majority of the votes in an election. Coalitions can have different objectives. The most well-known objective of a coalition is for two or more political parties to govern together. The coalition is then aimed at securing enough votes or enough seats in the parliament or council to form a government and implement a common agenda. But sometimes the objective is broader, such as national unity. Coalitions can be formed to bring together as many parties as possible to achieve unity and/or reconciliation in society. In this video, we will focus on the most commonly known coalition aimed at forming and running a government. There are two reasons why these coalitions are important. The first has to do with the way MPs, MPLs, and councillors are elected. We explain the election of public representatives in more detail in our Civics Academy videos. How does the electoral system work? And what is an MP? In South Africa, elections always result in multiple parties being represented in Parliament, a provincial legislature, or a municipal council. But if no party has more than 50% of the seats, two or more of them will have to join forces in order to achieve a majority. The second reason has to do with the fact that the president, provincial premiers, and municipal mayors are not directly elected by the voters, but indirectly by members of parliament, the provincial legislatures, or the municipal councils. So a candidate for one of these positions may need more than the votes of their own party to win. They then need a coalition of parties to vote them into office. The combination of these two aspects of our law makes coalitions important. Coalitions have advantages and disadvantages. One advantage is that a coalition government of multiple political parties will represent different political ideologies, cultures, and ideas. This helps to bring opposing communities together because they see their representatives working together. Another advantage is that a coalition government has to adopt policies based on compromise and consensus between the parties. These policies may be smarter and last longer than policies adopted by one majority party, which may be abolished as soon as that party loses power. Lastly, having a well-managed coalition of parties sharing power and working towards the same objectives may make government more stable in the long run. There are disadvantages too. First, the composition of the coalition may not perfectly reflect the will of the voters. For example, a party with 30% or 40% of the seats may be excluded from the coalition and therefore from the government if enough other parties come together against it. At the same time, a small party with only 3% of the seats may become part of the government and be able to wield much more power than its share of the vote entitles it to. Second, coalition governments may be unstable. If the partnership is weak and some parties change their minds soon after the coalition is formed, it will not last. Unstable coalitions are not good for government and may make voters lose faith in politics. So what can be done to make coalitions more stable? Political parties can start preparing for coalitions before the elections. They can form careful alliances or rule out working with certain parties without compromising their desire to win. After an election with no outright majority, parties must negotiate pragmatic and binding coalition agreements. Compromises are necessary, and it is not possible to agree on everything. The agreement should spell out the coalition's policies and include rules for resolving disputes. It should be made public to make it more difficult for coalition partners to walk away from it. The distribution of political leadership positions is essential. Each coalition partner must be visible in the coalition. Smaller parties should not be marginalized, since they are needed as much as the largest parties to sustain the majority. But it is not wise to give the most powerful positions to the smaller parties. In general, the largest parties in the coalition should exercise the most responsibility. Coalition partners should not negotiate about who gets to appoint civil servants or about tenders. They must focus on policies and political leadership positions. Summary. Coalitions are a natural consequence of the way our elections work in South Africa. They have advantages and disadvantages. They can encourage compromise and cooperation between parties, but they can also be unstable, and they may not always reflect the will of the voters. They require mature and pragmatic leadership with clear, public agreements, and all the parties in the coalition should play their part in accordance with their relative strengths.